Hello, flamingos, and welcome to Disrupting Obesity. I'm Charlotte Skanes, and I lost over 200 pounds without surgery, without fads, and without hating myself through the process. I'm here to help you unlearn what the diet industry has been feeding you and to talk about what it actually takes to lose weight and keep it off. I want to help you make real mindset shifts and start to build trust with yourself again, all while giving you the tools that you'll need to do it, but without losing yourself or your mind in the process. It might be Monday, but we're not starting over. So brace yourself, Gladys, and let's get into it. Hello, flamingos. Welcome to episode 118. And this is the last one in our 101 Weight Loss Truth series. This is part 18. It is the longest series I have ever done. My next longest one was 9 episodes, which last year I did first, because September, my first episode, it was 0909. So I went, I should do 9 episodes. So I did. And that series is still there if you wanted to give it a listen. It's totally different from this one, but we're 18 episodes into this one. And this is our very last one. Those of you who've been playing along at home will know that we only have 3 left. We've got to start today at number 99. And I tried to warn you last week, and I think I warned everybody the week before. The last little bit here is a little bit heavy. I should probably say something about trigger warnings. I'm just sitting down to do this. These episodes have all been just completely off the cuff. You've probably noticed. This one's going to be off the cuff too. I know what the last 3 are. I know why they're the last 3 and why I feel so emotional about them. So we're just going to see how well I do today. But number 99 is have a singular focus and accept that you don't have a choice. Now, I've talked about this one before. I've talked about it a couple times. Probably the first thing that comes to mind, and this is almost 100 episodes ago now, believe it or not, is episode 21, which is called Safety Nets and Zebras. That was the first time that I really opened up about my experience with almost dying. And this one, number 99, is born directly from that experience. Now, this is going to factor in to number 100 too, so I might as well just do a tiny little summary for anybody who's new, because I know there are new people listening with every episode that comes out, and I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I've missed so much, I have no idea what's going on. Here's what's going on. So when I was 7 months pregnant with my 3rd son, I was 32 weeks pregnant. I became catastrophically ill with necrotizing pancreatitis. I spent 5 months in the hospital. They weren't sure for very large chunks of it whether or not I was going to live or die. I didn't just have the necrotizing pancreatitis. There were a lot of other complications that came up as a result, and other things that just happened randomly that didn't make any sense to anybody. I developed Ogilvy syndrome. That one did make sense. It's rare, but it still made a lot of sense. That's like a paralysis of your bowel, kind of. There was a lot going on. I had 13 blood transfusions. I had more procedures than I could count. The whole thing started with an airlift and a crash C-section. And really, it went downhill from there. You'd think the airlift and the crash C-section would be, ooh, that's the bad part of the story. No, I wish it was. It's really not. And I don't feel like I need to go into too much detail with all of this because, like I said, I have talked about it before and I don't want to bore anybody. But 5 months in the hospital is a pretty long time. I was considered very young. I was only 37 when this happened. So for my nursing staff, for some of them, I was the youngest patient that they'd ever had under their care for that long. I also had a newborn baby that I pretty much wasn't allowed to see. I only met him a handful of times before I was discharged from the hospital. And I was separated from my other 2 children the entire time as well. So it was a very difficult time. There's about 7 weeks or so of it that I've completely blacked out. And I think it's just a mechanism in my brain for self-preservation because the stuff I do remember is pretty horrific, frankly. And it's definitely not something that I would ever want to go through again. I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to sit and how to stand, how to eat. The whole time I was in hospital, I was on oxygen. I was catheterized. I didn't have a feeding tube, but I was fed TPN through my PICC lines every day. I wasn't allowed to eat or drink anything. It was a very crazy and very intense experience. there are a couple of things, and the next one is something that I realized in the moment while all of this was happening to me in the hospital, and we'll get there in a minute. Um, this one, though, number 99, is something that I realized after a lot of reflection, because people would ask me, how did you survive? And my answer was just kind of a blank stare, and I really don't know. And it's not that I really know now, aside from absolutely crazy medical advancements and just being so fortunate to have been in Canada and to have had access to that healthcare and access to those doctors. But when I look back on what got me through, it was two things: have a singular focus and accept that you don't have a choice. Now, I realize that your situation isn't as extreme as mine, at least I absolutely hope not. But that statement applies to a lot of other things. In particular, it applies to weight loss. Now, obviously, this one's a little bit relative. It depends on where you are with your weight loss. But if I use myself as an example, when I was 338 pounds, I felt like it was a death sentence. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to kill myself with food if I kept going the way that I was. And I was right. I was not wrong at all. I was gaining at least 30 pounds a year, and I was only 24 years old. So, yeah, I was in big trouble. I was on a runaway train and I was the conductor. So it was a disaster. I was really headed down a bad road, and the end result was death. It was going to be complications from obesity. I don't know how it could have gone any other way. Now, your situation might not be as extreme as that either. But I think we all know that there are health complications that come with obesity. And I know the body positivity movement is trying really hard to make us not see that there is a problem with weighing 300 or 400 pounds. It is not healthy. It is not a good choice, and it will take years off your life. I didn't understand it while I was doing it, but that was a big driver for me the first time that I was losing weight. It was the fear. It was not wanting to die from being fat. That really is what it came down to. So my singular focus became dealing with the weight. When I was in the hospital, my singular focus was going home. I didn't care what I had to do. I didn't care how hard it was or how much it hurt. I had to do what I had to do so that I could go home. That was my only focus. And when I was losing my weight the first time or the second time, my focus was on getting the weight off and getting myself into a healthy body. That became my singular focus. Just like my focus in the hospital was, I got to do whatever it takes to get my ass back home. The focusing can be a little bit harder than the second part. And I know I could have divided these up, but they are so hand in glove for me that I had to keep them together. You have to accept that you don't have a choice. When I weighed over 300 pounds, I felt like I didn't have a choice because I was going to die if I kept going. It was pretty black and white for me. It was very, very straightforward. When I was in the hospital, I didn't have a choice because then the choice was quite immediate and quite literal. I could do what they needed me to do or I could die, period. So having a singular focus, I was easy. I wanted to go home. Accepting that I didn't have a choice when I was in the hospital, that was also pretty easy. Now, my team would have told you that I did actually have a choice. And there were times where I exercised that choice. Absolutely, I did. Because let me tell you, I don't know if you've ever had to relearn how to walk. It really fucking sucks. It is awful. And every back to school special that has ever been made about this, they're all right. Like the whole, you think it's just like a trope where, oh, look, they hate their physiotherapist, but they can't live with it. I have never hated anyone in my entire life the way that I hated my lead physiotherapist. And when I say I hated him, I mean, I used to lie there visualizing gouging his eyes out with a grapefruit spoon. And I knew he was trying to help me, but everything he was asking me to do hurt. Everything he was asking me to do felt impossible. And if this is episode 1 for you, or you haven't heard me talk about this stuff before, when I say I couldn't move, I literally mean I could not lift my arm to brush my own hair. I was starting at absolutely zero. My earliest physiotherapy exercises were literally things like just taking my foot and trying to move my toes forward and move my toes back. And it wasn't because I'd sustained a spinal cord injury. It was because of muscle atrophy. I had been unable to move I was going to say for so long, it does not take very long. I had been unable to move for just long enough that my muscles decided to pack it up, pack it in, we were done. So you're trying to deal with the muscle atrophy part, you're trying to deal with the mental piece, and you're trying to deal with the fact that this hurts really bad and it's the very last thing that you want to do. Does any of this sound familiar on a weight loss journey? Because it all sounded very familiar to me. I did not want to make better food choices. I did not want to not go to McDonald's. I did not want to not have the second ice cream cone. I didn't necessarily want to do any of that shit, but I didn't have a choice. If I wanted to get out of my obese body and into a thin, healthy body, I didn't have a choice. Just like when I was in the hospital, if I wanted to live, if I wanted to get out of there, I didn't have a choice. I had to stand there in that horrible, what I called the Terminator, which, because it just looked like this big mechanical thing, but it was a walker, but not like the kinds you see elderly people pushing through the mall. This thing came all the way up to my chest, and it had a platform at chest height that I could lower my arms onto, which was a damn good thing because my legs didn't work. So I would be holding my weight with my arms, holding on to this platform, and then my legs were kind of behind me. And my earliest physio was just standing there with somebody counting. Could I stand there for 10 seconds? Could I stand there for 15 seconds? And just slowly building that up. And then it was take a step. Like this process took months. And the whole time I was very, very ill. So I'm trying to learn how to rewalk with PICC lines in both arms. I've got a chest tube. I've got drains in my stomach. I'm recovering from a C-section. It was nuts, but I didn't have a choice. It was so much easier to just lay in that bed and let things happen to me. But if I didn't try, if I didn't make the effort, I wasn't going to get to go home. And everything was about the singular focus. And for you, everything's about that focus too. Because I don't know where your clock is right now. Everybody's clock is ticking at different rates. When I was in the hospital, my clock was ticking pretty quickly. I didn't have a lot of time. I had to figure this out. If I couldn't figure out how to hold down food, for example, there was no way I was ever going to get home. If I couldn't figure out how to walk up and down stairs, I was never going to be let home. I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital until I could do the same number of stairs that it took to get from my front entryway to the main floor of my house. I will say though, just because we're on the subject, people think walking is hard, like relearning how to walk, because that's what we see on TV. And it makes for really good visuals because you've got those parallel bars. I didn't even get to the parallel bars until like my last 3 weeks in hospital. But you got those parallel bars and you have all these great TV dramatic climactic moments. Learning how to walk is very hard, period. Learning how to sit again, in my experience, so much harder. So much harder. You don't even think about the muscles that you use to hold your body upright in a chair until those muscles don't work. And it is just, yeah, learning how to sit was so much harder for me. If you can tell yourself it is critical that I have a singular focus and that I accept that I don't have a choice, this is going to be so much easier for you. Because when you feel like you have a choice, you also have a way out. That little goblin in your brain there, Mr. Self-Sabotage, he sees it as a way out. If you aren't committed, if you're not focused on this, and especially if you don't accept that you do not have a choice. And since we seem to be throwing caution to the wind a little bit more of late, I'm pissed at the body positivity movement for this. I'm angry about the way that they have destigmatized how much harder it is to move through the world in a bigger body and how dangerous it can be, downplaying things like diabetes and heart disease and fatty liver disease. These are all very real things that can kill you. And unfortunately, they also are hallmarks of obesity. They seem to come right alongside it. So I think we have to be really careful with the language that we're using here. And I'm all for body acceptance and I'm all for body positivity. We should all love ourselves exactly the way that we are, but we need to do it with our eyes open. And we need to acknowledge the very real health risks that come along with being obese, because they are very real and they are also very lethal. So when you take that into consideration, you don't have a choice. And your choice really is kind of the same as mine was. You can do something about your weight, or you can deal with the health consequences. and nobody wants to deal with the health consequences. And something else that I've talked about before, and I'm trying to talk about in a more brave way, is how being hospitalized when you are overweight is that much harder. And I don't even necessarily mean the stigma or the prejudice that you'll encounter from the medical community. And honestly, sometimes the silence is worse. I really found that. I found it was just as awful when my weight was addressed as it was when it wasn't. Like when I was in a situation where my weight was obviously a barrier, it was obviously a problem to either move my body to help me, or it could have been anything really. And nobody would talk about it because everybody was afraid of hurting my feelings, and or at least I assume so. Um, and I do appreciate that, but sometimes we actually need to talk about the elephant in the room. And I'm sorry, that was probably the wrong choice of words there, but sometimes we actually need to bring out into the light the thing that everybody's afraid to talk about. Number 100 connects to this one too, and it also stems from my time in the hospital. This isn't something that I learned upon reflection. This is something that I was actually using in real time to keep myself going while I was trying to stay alive and while I was trying to get out of that hospital. And it turns out it's actually really, really helpful on a weight loss journey. Number 100, there is no backward. There's only forward. Oh, I knew this one was going to be the hard one. I can feel my voice getting thicker and my eyes are starting to. So, the first couple months in the hospital, well, the whole thing was intense, but the first couple of months were just minute to minute and day to day. And then I had that big period, that like 7 weeks or so that I completely blacked out, that I'm assuming were the absolute worst of the period that I was in the hospital. And then I started to remember things. Like, no, that's not that's not what I mean to say. I mean, I started to be able to hold on to time, because there was a long time there where I had no concept of time whatsoever. But then I started to be able to hold things in a timeline, and I didn't have another period where everything blacked out. So I got super sick and I was in the hospital for a few weeks, and then I lost like 7 weeks of time, and then it's just a continuous line from then until now, right? Just that one weird like 7 week break. Well, after we got past that 7 week break and I started to mentally feel a little bit more like myself, physically I was still as deep in the weeds with this as I was going to get, and that wasn't going to get better for a long time yet. But once I was like myself, when I talk about, I'm not my body, I'm the thing that lives inside of it. Once the thing that lives inside my body had kind of lodged itself back in there pretty soundly, I was in very extensive therapy the whole time I was in hospital. Obviously, I was also in a teaching hospital, so the psych rotation, I think, was only like 6 weeks. So I burned through a lot of psych residents. And they would come in and talk to me, I think every day. And one of the things that they were impressed by, and you guys know I don't like talking about this because it feels self-aggrandizing, and that's not who I am or the way I want to move through the world. But one of the things that impressed the psychology students and the psychologists was I just kept saying, when appropriate, but I just kept saying over and over again, there's no backward, there's only forward. Because I knew that if I laid there in that hospital and I thought about the life that I had led before the airlift, and if I thought about the life that I wasn't a part of, because the world keeps turning, even if you don't, and anybody who's been sick can tell you that, like, everybody else just has to keep going, and you're caught in like this stasis of trying to find your way back to your life. If I had thought about those things, if I hadn't had that singular focus and stayed just completely focused and zeroed in on what I was going to have to do to get out of that hospital and back to my family, I wouldn't have made it. And I knew that. I knew if I stayed caught in the backward, I wasn't going to make it to forward. And I know that quite often that's the case with our weight loss journeys as well. We have a tendency, and there's a tendency among coaches, to stay focused on how we got here. And how we got here, the backwards, what happened before. Yeah, it's important because it made you who you are, but it's not going to determine how you move forward. And we're not going to be able to take it into the future with us. So we need to leave it behind. There's no backward. There's only forward. And that is as true of a catastrophic illness as it is of dealing with obesity or trying to lose any amount of weight, really. How you got here doesn't matter. It's how you move forward that matters. There's an analogy that I like to use in my program and with my flamingos in the forum. And I say that if you picture yourself in a beautiful yard, and it's your backyard, and you're out there, you're working on your garden and you're pruning your roses and they're beautiful. And you're all focused on your roses and you got your little gloves on and your cute little clippers and you're working away. And the next thing you know, you hear a thud and you turn and you look and there's an 11-year-old boy bleeding in the middle of your lawn. He just like fell out of the sky and he's laying there bleeding on your lawn. What are you going to do? Are you going to put down your pruning shears and go inside and make a cup of tea and try to figure out how that kid got there? Do you think it was a catapult? Maybe he fell out of a plane. He could have jumped. Is there a tree up there? How do you think he got? You're not going to worry about any of that shit. There's a bleeding kid on your lawn. What are you going to do about it? That's the question. Backwards doesn't matter here. All that matters is how you're going to deal with this situation. Yeah, your weight's the same thing. In this analogy, if you've heard me use it before, your body is the kid that fell out of the sky, and you, the one that lives inside your body, you're the one pruning the roses. So you have a choice. You can look at your body lying on that grass and go, I wonder how it got there. Oh, I know how it got there. This happened, and then that happened, and then I did a bunch of eating, and then I lost some weight, and then this happened, and then that. The kid's bleeding on the lawn while we're standing here going through the yo-yo. Why are we doing that? It doesn't matter. The kid's bleeding on the lawn. There's no backward. There's only forward. And again, I'm not saying the past doesn't matter. It made you who you are. It brought you to this moment. It is very important, undeniably. But it doesn't matter in the sense of how are we going to move forward? And you can't take it with you anyway. And the truth is, you probably don't want to. I'm not trying to be hurtful. I'm trying to help set you free. We have somehow made it to the end of our list. I know. It seems crazy, especially after 18 episodes of doing this. And even when the first episode had 20 of these in it, it still took me 18. But here we are. Number 101. You've totally got this. No, that doesn't mean the episode's over. I'm still here. I know that's like the last thing that you guys hear from me every week. And it's the last thing you're going to hear from me on this list too. I've been doing this for a while. I think this is my 7th year, I think, that I've been coaching women, that I've been taking people through this. More than 10,000 of you are using my system. You can do this. I haven't met anyone yet who wasn't capable of doing this. Everything about our diet culture right now is sort of telling you that you can if, you wear the magical bracelet or eat the food that wore purity rings or whatever their criteria is. But most of it is setting us up to fail. And I sometimes feel like the glut of information that there is on weight loss also makes it feel that much harder. Not just because of how it all contradicts each other and how confusing it all is, but just the fact that there's so much of it makes us think that this is impossible. It makes us think that we can't do it, and you can. I promise you that you can. I haven't met anybody yet who couldn't. You think you can't because you've been told you can't. And maybe you think you can't because you haven't been able to do it before. Just because you haven't been able to do it before doesn't mean you can't do it now. I'm also willing to bet that maybe you haven't tried doing it my way. And my way is a little bit different from everything else that's going on out there. And it really is okay if you don't believe that you can do this. I know there's a big push for that too, that you have to manifest it and you have to believe in yourself. Yeah, when I weighed 300 pounds, the last thing I had was a belief in myself that I could, drop a couple hun. That wasn't, my beliefs on that weren't too high. They weren't, they definitely weren't skyrocketing. I didn't have that trust with myself. That trust comes. So don't wait to believe in yourself. Believe me. Believe me. Because I have literally talked to thousands and thousands of women about this. You can do this. You don't have to believe you can do it. I believe that you can do it. And you're going to believe that you can do it too once you start proving it to yourself and once you start building back that trust with yourself. Because that's what a lot of this comes down to. We've tried, we've failed. We've tried, we've failed. We did this, we did that. It didn't work. We put the weight back on. We never lost the weight in the first place. We tried, we tried, we tried. So the belief starts to become, I can't do this. You don't trust yourself to be able to do this. And that's fine. Trust me. You can do this even if you don't believe that you can. The belief will come later. The behaviors have to come first. You can do this. You totally have got this. Please believe in yourself. I didn't believe in myself either, and I did it. And I'm here to tell you that you definitely can do this too. Don't give up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for doing the work. This isn't easy, but you're still here, and that counts. It matters. You're showing up. If you've subscribed, shared, or left a review, thank you. It really does help more than you know, and it also makes it easier for other women to find this podcast so they feel a little less alone on their journey. If you want more support, resources, or info on the program or the membership, check out disruptingobesity.com or come see what I'm up to over on Instagram. You know where to find me. Come tell me how I can be helpful. And in the meantime, keep trying, keep tracking, don't be intimidated, and don't give up. You've totally got this.